Hello, everyone. Welcome. So good to see all of you. All right. Well, welcome to Alight's Workshare gathering today. I hope you all enjoyed that song as much as I did. So wanted to share with you a story about the song you were all just listening to. It's by a Kenyan artist and it's called Sweet Mama. And it is all about paying tribute to the amazing women and mothers across the world. And it's actually Shadrack's favorite song. So that is why we played it here this morning. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So as all of you know, Alight works with displaced and vulnerable communities across the globe. And a huge part of the work that we do is always be nimble and having this pulse on making changes and pivoting as far as scope of work, and when needs change, when communities change locations, we are always there ready to follow people and be able to switch up things that need to be. And so the project you're going to hear about today is a really good example of just that. And so I want to take a second also before we keep going to talk about everybody that is on this call today, so everybody has a sense of who is here with us. So we've got all kinds of Alight family here today. We've got Alight staff, we've got volunteers, we have people who've traveled with us, and actually we've got a group that traveled with Shadrack, our speaker, and Igor, who's also going to join us today. And then of course we've got board members and we've got some supporters who have been with the organization for decades. So super excited to have all of you here. Geographically, just want to share that we have people on this call from DRC, from Pakistan, Thailand, Uganda, Rwanda, Sudan. We've got lots from the Somali Peninsula. And last but not least, we've got a whole group from South Sudan. So welcome everybody. All right, if you haven't turned on your video, feel free to turn on your video. I would love to see all of you. And so let me share a little bit about what you're going to hear today. So today's Workshare Spotlight is all about changing circumstances. And this is a displaced community of over 40,000 people who didn't have access to clean and safe water. And Alight came in and figured out funding and logistics and got the team ready to go. And everything changed as soon as that happened. And so, you know, over 40,000 people ended up going down to 13,000 people. People were relocating. All of a sudden, one site turned into 116 sites. So this is really a project that is going to give you a glimpse at what can happen when everything that could go wrong goes wrong, and how you have these dedicated teams who just push forward and keep going and always keep Alight customers at the center of it all. And so our format is going to be the same as the last Workshare series. So I'm going to ask Shadrack some questions. We're going to do our 5 and 5 activities so that you can get to know Shadrack as a human. And then we're going to go in to share out about the project. And so Igor, Alight staff, who I will introduce in a little bit, is going to walk through that project with Shadrack, and then we'll open it up for all of you to be able to jump in with any questions that you might have. So let's talk about Shadrack, everybody. So there's a lot of things I really want to tell you about Shadrack, but I'll start with some tactical stuff. So he's based in Juba, where we have 5 field offices, and his role at Alight is to manage WASH, which is water, sanitation, and hygiene. So if you keep hearing the term WASH, you'll know that is referring to water, sanitation, and hygiene. And so the superpower that I want all of you to know about is that Shadrack makes the impossible happen. This is who he is as a person. It's how he has been his entire career. And you're going to hear about that today. So Shadrack joined Alight about 10 years ago. He was actually working in Afghanistan when he joined Alight. And he spent 6 years in the Somali program. Soon after that, he decided he wanted to retire and go home to Kenya to spend his time with his grandchildren. But that only lasted 2 months. Alight and Igor, who you'll meet later, had different plans for Shadrack. So there was a challenge. It was another, we need to make the impossible happen. And so Shadrack was pulled out of retirement and sent to Bangladesh. And he implemented and installed almost 100 borehole wells within 3 months of arriving in country. And so Alight doesn't have a program there. We don't have existing staff and offices. So this is just another example of how Shadrack just makes things happen by finding others and just making it all work. And on top of that, he was also tasked with fixing existing borehole wells, and he did it. And actually, there's a couple of Alight team members who have said in their entire career, they've never seen anything like this happen in the humanitarian sector. So, and so while he still is with us, he is, he's not spending all of his time with his grandkids, but he does get to see them often. And actually, Shadrack is on leave this week in Kenya with 5 of his 8 grandchildren. And so we might see them in the background if we're lucky enough. So before I start to ask Shadrack some questions, I would just like to have all of you jump off of mute and let's welcome Shadrack. Let him hear all of your warm, friendly energy, and then we'll go ahead and put him on the spot.
Good morning, Shadrack.
Welcome. Good morning,
Shadrack.
everybody.
To have you.
Hi, Shadrack.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Morning.
Go ahead, jump back on mute. Shadrack, my friend, are you ready? All right.
Yes, I'm ready.
Hi. Okay, so I'm going to ask you.
It was ready
Yeah, so-
1 week ago.
What's that? All right, Shadrack. So
Sorry.
can you hear me okay?
Nadia, yes.
Okay, good. So Shadrack,
Yes, I can hear you.
good. So I want to know, tell me about a gift that you've given recently to someone.
Sure. Yeah, my wife and I happen to have attended the same elementary school in the countryside where we come from. So when I took my R&R, and fortunately, the government of Kenya had opened school after several months of closure as a result of COVID-19. So we decided to donate 20 cartons of bar soap and 20 boxes of face mask to the grade 4 class that resumed a few days ago, just to remember how we started, because for me, that elementary school means so much to me. So that is the gift that my wife and myself gave to the elementary school where we studied. That was just a few days ago.
What is the name of the elementary school?
It is called Ugana Primary School. Ugana Primary School.
It's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Shadrack. And so how have you been in the humanitarian sector?
Well, 20 good years. 20 good years. I started my humanitarian work with Care International in one of the largest refugee camps in Kenya. It's called the Dadaab Refugee Camp, with over 600 refugees, mainly from Somalia, and a number of them, a small percentage from South Sudan, Rwanda, Eritrea, and Ethiopia. I worked there for 10 years, and interestingly, one of my fellow managers just joined the ARC recently, Julius Onyango. I suppose Julius is listening. So 10 years with care, 1 year with Relief International in Afghanistan, 1 year with Solidarité. Solidarité is a humanitarian organization. And then now 8 years with Alight, 6 of which I worked in Somalia, country director, Alight Somalia. Then now with South Sudan, I have been there for 1 year, 8 months. Then you put the 4 months in Bangladesh, that makes 8 years with Alight. So that is a good 20 years.
That's incredible, Shadrack. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I do have a couple more questions for you before we go on. So you work in challenging environments, yes? That's kind of been like your entire career in this sector, but especially recently, yeah? COVID has made that even more challenging, right? Like added constraints. So as you've been caring for others, both professionally and personally, like we just heard, how do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, at our workplace, fortunately, I have a country director who is very stringent on matters of COVID-19 measures. That is Mr. Selwyn. As you all know, most of businesses and transactions, official ones, are currently being done through Zoom or Skype. So that is not a problem. But when it comes to the Juba office itself, we are very serious about observing COVID-19 measures as outlined by the Ministry of Health. It is the major one key aspect is the social distance, so much such that even the meetings, everyone sits in his or her office as we conduct management meeting within Juba. Apart from that, of course, the issue of face masks and hand sanitization is also very well observed at our workplace. For me, at my individual level, let's say when I go back to my guest house, of course, the guest house, there is all the social distancing that you may want to have. So there is no challenge there. And then when I have to go out, maybe to buy some food stuff, there are certain stores that observe COVID-19 measures very strictly. I know of one, and that is where I visit. And fortunately, it's the one nearest to our guest house. So that is how I try to manage, or rather keep myself safe. And then for my staff, or rather our staff in the field, we have made sure we supply them with the necessary PPEs. We give them face masks. We advocate serious social distancing, and we even encourage that they observe even when they are undertaking their day-to-day work amongst the affected persons. Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot of different moving parts on top of already a very full and stressful job. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So Shadrack, you're a very joyful person, and anybody that has spent time with you knows this. I'm curious because I feel like you just have a joke ready to tell at any moment. So I'm hoping you'll tell us what is like your favorite of all time joke that you like to tell.
Oh, the joke, yes. I don't know whether to call it a joke. Okay, I've always joked about this with my colleagues, with my friends. I tell them that I got into a polygamous marriage 20 years ago. And since then, apart from my first wife, who has decided to stick with me, I've had several wives, and the latest, I've managed to keep her for 8 years. Interestingly, recently she decided to change her name. I don't know the reason. Maybe she wants to look more attractive. Now she's called Alight, and indeed she's more attractive and colorful. That's the joke.
Thank you. That was a good. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Shadrack, what are you doing outside of work? Like,
Yes.
what are your hobbies? What do you feel like energy? What are you passionate about when you're not working, when you're not volunteering?
Yeah, of course, there are two parts of outside the work. That is, and outside Juba in Kenya with my family and grandchildren, of course. So when I'm in the guest room, I like listening to music, but I also communicate a lot with my close family and friends. That's what keeps me going. I communicate a lot through the means of phone, WhatsApp, Skyping, and then I watch news, especially very much. I follow the COVID-19 trends globally. And then, of course, I also watch a lot of African movies, especially Nigerian movies. So that's how I spend my time in the guest house. Of course, when I take my R&R, I always have said this many times, and that was even the reason for me separating with the RC then. I like spending time with my grandchildren. You can imagine all the 20 years, I have all the stories that they would want to listen to, have all the pictures. And then most importantly, I take personal development very seriously. I have some projects which I undertake, make sure that even when I finally retire, I will have a comfortable retirement time. So that is how I spend my time, both in Juba and in Kenya. That is outside the day-to-day Alight work.
Thank you. Okay, so Shadrack, how are you sharing your stories from the humanitarian sector with your grandchildren? Do you send them like on WhatsApp? Do you have a journal? Or, like, are you writing them and it's something that you'll like hand over to them?
I have a whole album of places I've visited, my humanitarian work, and most importantly, what I keep on reminding my grandchildren and my children is how lucky they are that they are living a normal life. And I share with them a lot of pictures of children of their age who don't have the opportunity to go to school, who don't have a meal, who sleep in the open. I want them to appreciate the ups and downs of life, and also appreciate to help others who are not fortunate. So this is my life, and having had an opportunity to see this happen, I want them to what it is and how lucky they are. I have a whole album dating back from Dadaab to Afghanistan, and the most striking ones were in Bangladesh, and then, of course, in South Sudan.
Very cool. That's an incredible gift that you are giving your grandchildren, Shadrack. Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourself before we jump into this project. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to bring a Light team member, Igor, onto the call with us. Well, he's here, but I'm just going to have him join in, and he's going to be talking through this project, Shadrack. And so just want to share a little bit with you about Igor. So Igor joined Alight in the 90s, and he joined the organization when there was a big group of displaced communities from Kosovo that arrived in Montenegro. And that was when Igor officially started working with us. And so he also worked with water, sanitation, and hygiene along with Shadrack, and manages shelter and housing. So really across all of Alight and all of our country programs, he's touching all of those projects that are happening. And if ever you are wanting to talk to somebody about solar energy, Igor is your person. All right, so with that, Igor, are you ready?
Absolutely.
Welcome, how are you?
I'm well. How is everyone? Good to see you. I see many familiar names and places from some of our Dreammaker trips, and from great friends and supporters of Alight. So you're all most welcome. Also, our amazing teams from around the globe. Hey, welcome. Good to see you. And it's always a pleasure to talk to my good friend and colleague for many years, Shadrack Onyango. Shadrack, this was a great opportunity kind of to remind myself about how an amazing human you are, and how I'm privileged to work with you on a daily basis, including on this amazing project in South Sudan. And this is truly a story of commitment, how Shadrack and Team South Sudan, managed to deliver water to the people in need in a very complex situation, no matter what. So it was a quest to deliver the service in a changing environment. And at the beginning of this discussion, of the presentation, Nadia mentioned how over a very short period of time, there were 40,000 people at this site called Korijo, which is in the very south of South Sudan, very close to Uganda border. So how come, can you give us some context, Shadrack? How come all of these people got there for a very short period of time? There was nothing there, right? Just an open area.
Yes, Igor, indeed, nobody wants to live in a refugee camp. So this is true also for the South Sudanese who are living in Uganda. One of the biggest refugee camps is called Bidi. So every what can I call it? Every sense, every indication of some security in South Sudan normally triggers an influx from the refugee camp into South Sudan. So Korijo IDP camp.
So people going back home,
to border
right?
Uganda. Yes, exactly. They go back home, but one would ask, if they are going back home, why are they in an IDP camp? They are in an IDP camp because their homes, where they are supposed to go back to, is currently not habitable. They are given that these people have been away for like over 10 years, so they'll find that most of the shelter is not there. The water systems, Korijo in Kajokeji County itself is served by groundwater source, mostly hand pump operated wells. So all these hand pumps spread across the villages are all run down. So they come and settle in an IDP camp as a transit into their actual homes. Transit because I call it transit for two reasons. One, because of frequent conflicts, these affected persons always have second thoughts. They still don't believe that indeed peace has come to South Sudan. So what they do, they come to the into South Sudan, but don't go deep into their main homes because they want to station themselves such that should anything happen, then they would quickly cross over into Uganda. And this also is coupled with the simple fact that the people who cross over actually are only adults and adults, able adults, not elderly, not people with disability, because most children are still in school in the refugee camps because there are no schools yet. So this is a group that we can call a group of karma that peace will finally happen, and then they would later invite their children, and of course the coming of rebuild the wells, all the infrastructure, all the services, health systems. So that is how Korijo IDP camp came into being. And in 2018, before I joined Alight, because I joined in 2019 February, in 2018 November, December, an assessment was carried out in Korijo. The assessment was triggered by a huge influx. And this influx was triggered by the prospects of a peace agreement that was about to be signed. So in 2018, before we submitted our 2019-2020 proposal to OFDA, an assessment was carried out because, of course, like I said before, there was an influx. And actually, it was established that within Korijo IDP camp, there were 40,294 IDPs spread in the 3 zones. Korijo IDP camp is divided into 3 zones, zone 1, 2, and 3. So when we undertook the assessment upon which we based our proposal design, there were 40,294 persons, mainly adult, able adults, children still left in Uganda, going through schooling within the refugee camp, and of course the elderly were also staying behind. One of the reasons why also we had that kind of influx is that indeed, talking to the refugees, life in the refugee camp is not easy. Talking to the displaced, life in the refugee camp is not easy. The food ration is very low. And of course, like I said, nobody wants to stay. Sudanese, especially in Kajukeji, are mainly farmers. So they would come in during farming season in big numbers. They farm their lands, and over time they would stay to supervise the farming, and then would go back to join their family. So that is what happened when we undertook the assessment, and our proposal design was based on 40,294 persons. Yes.
Okay, so a large number of people eager to go back to their proper homes. However, the homes and infrastructure destroyed. And then in lieu, or instead of the proper home, there is this massive temporary town or city with 40,000 people that needs water because, you know, it didn't exist before. It was an open agricultural land. And Alight was there on the ground to help, carried out these assessments, you know, how to best help. So what was the initial plan? What was the design that we were going after for this water system?
Yeah, this was a very
help people in this situation.
Yeah, this was a very interesting proposal, Igor, and for the sake of the audience, the concept note was actually designed only to drill 2 hand pump operated boreholes. And then this is the first time where the donor has insisted that what you are asking for is not enough, because I guess we had presented the problem in a very comprehensive manner, but interestingly, we were not asking for resources that was commensurate with the amount, or rather the magnitude. Why did we do this? We did this because indeed, like it's always the case. We were told to submit a proposal based on a certain budget bottom line. So you can imagine we had, as much as we appreciated the magnitude of the gaps, or rather the needs, we were, our proposal was also restricted, or rather constrained by the amount of. So we presented a very small amount of money to drill 2 hand pump boreholes, and then just when we had managed, the proposal was almost at the signing stage, we were called by the WASH team in DC. Igor and myself, they requested for a call, and to our surprise, they were asking us, why are you asking for a hand pump while you have 40,000 people? Guys, you need 2 deep boreholes and a big water yard, because indeed you need 1 borehole of a fairly high yielding status, or rather, you need a highly yielding borehole to meet the needs of 20,000 persons. So with 40,000, for sure, the ideal situation would have been to drill and equip 2 deep boreholes. But we could not present
briefly,
this proposal.
Shadrack, the people from DC, the WASH
yes,
specialists that you are mentioning, these are people from USAID, the Office for Foreign Disaster Assistance, who is the as we say, mainstay donor. They have been making this this possible at this site. Is that correct? I think that, you know, through these discussions that we have,
correct,
as well as we do, that this is the right time to help people, to help stabilize this mass of humanity, these 40,000 people in the place where they are, and by doing so, lay the ground to help them to go back to their proper homes when things get stabilized. Was that your read of the situation too?
absolutely, Igor, that's true. Yeah, then, okay, they said, you guys, you need 2 deep boreholes, and then we said, okay, we cannot accommodate this within the bottom line you have given. Then they told us, guys, present your requirement and put in 2 deep wells and a whole water yard. Let me explain what a water yard is, maybe for the sake of the audience. A water yard is a complete system with the source, that is the borehole. Actually, we are talking about extreme borehole here, where a borehole is just one of the components of a water yard. A source, which is a borehole, that is the first step in developing a water yard. The second system is the powering. That is, the borehole needs to be equipped with an electrical pump. It needs to have power. And we opted the most effective way of running a borehole is to have 2 sets of power, the generator and the solar. As you are all aware, solar is very expensive, very cheap to run, while the generator is expensive to run. But there are certain aspects of operation where the solar would not work, especially if you have so many people and you have to run the borehole for more than 18 hours, which is quite often. Then you can imagine the solar can only give you effective power for like 8 hours. So the 10 hours you'll have to revert to the generator, which can run any time of the day. So we installed a solar system, a generator system. Then another part of the water yard is the storage system. And that is when we have a 50,000 steel elevated tank. It is elevated 15 meters above ground. This is an extremely effective way of storing water because you would distribute the water to the collection point by gravity. So it is very cost effective. You don't need, there is no power consumed in distributing the water. Another big advantage of an elevated water tank, it gives you a central point for water treatment. Unlike a hand pump where somebody would collect water and probably follow that family to the household to give some tablets or some chlorine. With this kind of system, you pump water from the borehole to the tank, you treat it, you inject sufficient amount of chlorine, you test it, then you release it to the tap stand. You are sure that every family that fetches water from that tap stand is fetching a well-treated, well-tested quantity of water. That is another component of a water yard. Another very important component that we cannot forget is the piping system. It is called reticulation system. It is how you get your water from the borehole. The borehole could be at one point, while the tank where you want to pump the water for various reasons could be even 500 meters away. So the reticulation system is the piping system from the source to the storage system, then from the storage, using gravity to the tap stands, and also even to the you run another one to the women and girl friendly space, yeah, or to school. Now that system of piping is called reticulation system. So what I've just explained is what constitutes a water yard.
That's an amazing explanation, Shadrack. I'm really proud, when I hear kind of the
from the picture you can
summary of knowledge of our water operation, the stuff that we have done in places like Somalia and in Bangladesh, and then now getting to South Sudan, like these hybrid power systems, so that there's a certainty of service over, let's say, 18-hour period for the people. That's really an impressive system. And also using renewable power sources, not only running by fossil fuels, which Alight has led together with the USAID, in this case, US government, in the humanitarian sector. This has become a mainstream only in the past 5 years. Before that, it was kind of, not a very few humanitarian actors would venture into something like that. So from this amazing plan that you just laid out for the audience here, sometimes best laid plans, just end up being great plans, especially in the humanitarian sector where, due to a volatile environment, things getting stabilized, only, circumstances change. So what did we manage to do from, how did we end up implementing all of this? Things changed. I think we had challenges every step of the way, right?
Yeah, in fact, what I didn't mention is that when the USAID WASH team called us and they requested that we resubmit a new proposal with this component, this large component of the water infrastructure, indeed, there was a lot of discomfort amongst everyone else because the proposal was just about to be approved. And when we were requested to resubmit, then there was some level of unease because there was fear that this is going to actually prolong signed. And of course, as you all know, expense is dependent on OFDA.
Okay.
But a completely new proposal with a high amount of money. Actually, we submitted a proposal with 600,000 plus, because this is what it would take to do the 2 boreholes. Fortunately, our proposal did not attract so many issues. I think there was no issue at all. After submitting, it was a matter of weeks, and then we got the proposal approved. That was the first step of what you say things don't always work the way they do. This was full of uncertainties, not mentioning the COVID-19, which came in March. But before then, just when our proposal was approved, suddenly there was emptying of the 40,000 IDPs whom we had proposed to offer services, just left the camp, and we had only 13,000 left. A number of them went back to Uganda, and a good number also, because of the stability of the situation. Like I said, the IDP camp is like a transit center. So once they said that it was time to move into their actual homes, actually a good number moved into the villages, their real homes, getting out of the refugee camp. Remember, the boreholes were meant to serve the 40,000 within the IDP camp. Now, a good number had gone into the villages, another group went back to Uganda, and now we were left with 13,000 persons, technical people. There was no way we were going to drill and equip 2 boreholes when we had only 13 persons. So we were faced with the challenge of going back to OFD, and again I say, okay, guys, here, there's a situation here. The 40,000 that we had intended to serve now.
So actually, people decided to go back right from the camp, right?
We have only 13,000. Wanting to follow people with services where they are. Why? We will not do 2 boreholes. Persons is well served. Get into the villages.
Shadrack, if you want, you can turn off your video. That might help.
And start settling in their homes. They are usual. They decided to go back to the refugee camp for 1 month. Sorry?
If you want to turn off your video, it might help the connection. You're chopping up a little bit.
Hello? Oh, you want me to? Okay. Sure.
See if that helps.
Yeah, so it was another hard decision, because they could easily say, oh, that we don't have the IDPs, because we know that OFDA, surely they are more inclined to support IDPs than people who have already gotten into the host community. So we were taking a gamble by telling them, we are going to do one, we have 400,000 plus left, allow us to provide same water services to the people who are in IDP camp but have decided to settle in their ancestral homes. So this is what we did. We proceeded and developed 1 water yard as we present a request to OFDA to allow us spend this other half of the money to undertake rehabilitation, because as I mentioned before, there were so many boreholes that were run down because of abandonment, and they needed to be rehabilitated. in fact, rehabilitating these boreholes, because lack of water was one of the reasons that people were reluctant to come back home. And then, of course, many would also probably mostly leave refugee IDP camp to go back to the rural home because they want to go back to their farms to put up shelter and farm. So as expected, there were a lot of back and forth between Alight and the DC team. They are asking, oh, by doing this, are you sure you are targeting the same people? Are you sure the indicators will not change? But for sure, we did a good job. We presented a very good justification. And despite the back and forth, we were finally allowed to utilize that other half of funds to do, to rehabilitate. Actually, we were able to rehabilitate 116 boreholes. On matters of indicators and persons reached, in fact, we were able to reach even more people than boreholes within the IDP camp. So there were a lot of challenges because, like I've said, there were a lot of delays in getting the approval from DC.
But at the same time, if I may add, in
so
summer,
that we could use the fund for a different COVID-19.
Yeah, people decided basically things stabilized in South Sudan. Late last year, things stabilized. The peace process, kicked in. People felt safer. They decided to go back to their proper homes from this temporary safe haven that we helped establish for them. And then, instead of 40,000 people, all of a sudden at the safe haven, we are saving 13,500, and the rest, basically went to their proper homes. So working with the USAID people, we explained, okay, our commitment is to the customer, to the people that we serve wherever they are. So we went on after them, and instead of this second borehole at the safe haven at the displaced people camp, we built or restored 116 other wells. So each small village and hamlet got its borehole or its water well restored, the one that stood there and got, into disrepair because people are away being refugees in Uganda or somewhere else. So you guys managed to restore all of this, plus build this amazing, huge piece of infrastructure. And Alyssa shared some pictures with us showing how, the water rig took like a whole week to arrive from Juba to Korijo. At some places, people literally carrying or supporting the trailer so it doesn't fall through, the mud. And also, drilling, digging manually in this soil to be able to deliver or lay down the pipes wherever they're supposed to go. So I'm just trying to imagine what was the reaction by the people. How did they react? Those who left the camp and where we served them in their proper villages, rebuilding their homes, rebuilding their agricultural livelihoods, as well as those who remain at the camp waiting for better times to come so that they can go back home too. What was the reaction? Like, we have like two groups of people that we serve eventually.
Sorry, Igor, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
So what was the reaction what did the people say? This was an epic adventure of sorts, an epic water quest project, making sure that the water is delivered to the people wherever they are. So, can you share some of the insights, some of the human stories? What did people say when this was all said and done?
Yeah, indeed. If you remember several attempts to drill boreholes in Korijo, without success. PA is called Polish Humanitarian Aid or something. They tried several times. Other NGOs, they tried, and even access the funds. I had some fears that we have the fund, but shall we be successful in drilling, in getting a borehole with water? Because several people had tried and got dry boreholes. So I was really excited, Igor, when we realized that we had drilled a successful borehole. That was the beginning of the excitement. It started with me because we had the money, but there was that possibility of not being able to have a successful water source. Not having a successful water source meant that none of any development would have happened because everything depended on the water source. Then the people themselves, because there had been several surveys, groundwater surveys done, several attempts done, they were a bit skeptical. They were not sure this is going to happen, but we kept them, we told them that we were going to do our best, and indeed our best happened. And it was, to them, it was a miracle. They couldn't believe that this is happening. As you can see on the background, what you see is an indication of the level of water need. You can see the number of jerrycans, people who are waiting on the queue, but this was before we actually finished the water yard. When we drilled the borehole, and because of the need, the immediate need for water, the development of the substance would take time. So immediately we had a successful borehole, we decided to install a hand pump, at least just to alleviate the immediate need. And the people you see queuing there are picking water from the hand pump. This is the same borehole that was actually equipped with the electric pump and pump. Now they have more than enough water. So talking about how people reacted, I wish I had the videos. I have several videos of testimonies from the ladies, from the girls, from the men, on how this project has changed their lives. For sure, we had a slide. The first slide, though it's not here, showed where they were fetching water first. They used to walk like 2 kilometers to the stream to fetch very dirty water. Then secondly, you can imagine women and girls walking 1 to 2 kilometers. And as you can see on the background, this area is a bit forested. So they are walking forested path 2 kilometers away. You can imagine how they are exposing themselves to possible gender-based violence. So this project change their lives in that to GBV cases, women and girls chose, like for sure, if you talk to my friend Grace, she'll tell you that attendance at women and girl friendly space has actually is enhanced because women now have time. They go fetch water within 10 minutes. They have enough water. They can go and attend all the lesson, all the skill building within women and girl friendly space. Men themselves are excited that their children no longer have to walk long distances. So it's a big story, Igor. It's an exciting story.
Yeah, I bet it is. It's totally exciting. It's kind of a change in the life of the community. Before that, they just had, most people went to the nearby stream or river where water is unsafe for drinking, and all of a sudden there is a 21st century compound with solar lights and people taking pride and ownership of that. So I heard some of these stories. That's just truly amazing. Transformation of the community. But as we know, things change in humanitarian post-disaster environment, and we consider this to be a post-disaster or post-war, post-conflict environment. And I understand that after this amazing success, community kind of moving on, there has been some recent developments too. Can you share some of that with us, please?
Yeah. Indeed, this was one opening. It was around the third week of September. There were some differences between the government people. We have government, they call there is SPLM in government and then SPLM in opposition. So these are the group that are supposed to have come together to form a government of national unity. But of course, as expected, this is still at a very fundamental, very basic stage, and we expect that differences would still happen here and there. It will take time for complete peace to reign. There was a senior army general from the opposition side who crossed over, and then Korijo happened, the so-called IO, then in charge of this specific area, crossed over the government, and he wanted to cross. The opposition would not skirmishes, some clashes, very serious ones. And like I told you, the people, this IDP camps, this group of people have seen this so many times, so they always have their one leg in South Sudan and another one in Uganda, in case such eventualities would come to pass. So indeed it happened, and for me, my biggest worry was, now that this is happening, and actually the IDPs, the 13,000 that were now left, were actually also fleeing. They were crossing over, and the camp suddenly was left with less than 20 households. I was extremely depressed. We were all depressed as a team in South Sudan, because we had completed this project hardly 6 months back, and now there was every possibility of this investment going down the drain by people, by looting, because these opposing forces, when they clash, the first thing, like we have assets like solar panels, generators, which they would be worried. But for me, this development also brought one very, very encouraging aspect of what we have done in Korijo. While most IDPs were fleeing to Uganda, because of the way the community value the assets, the way they value the investment, the youth of this area actually vote to stay back and defend these facilities, the water yard, the youth center, women and girlfriends space. They said they would stay back and defend these facilities, gesture from the community. It means that they have really embraced this project and they see it as their own. So as we speak, at least some calm has come, some peace has come, and a number of IDPs have actually come back, and all our staff, the security guards, back in Korijo. This was a very trying moment for everyone else, including us in Juba as Alight team, the community themselves, and the affected person, because this was something that, like I said before, had changed their life. And then suddenly there was every possibility of the whole system being looted, vandalized, but fortunately, we are happy that none of these facilities were touched. So we are back, and the operations are more or less resumed to the full.
Wow,
Thank you,
what a
Shadrack.
story, Shadrack. This is such an amazing finale of kind of this ordeal, really tough and persistent work that you guys have done. You know, stories like this, projects like this, you know, this is what keeps me running, makes me proud to be a humanitarian, also an Alighter, a member of the Alight team, you know, working with these amazing women and men who make these things happen, working with the community to the extent that, you know, we develop joint ownership of these projects, and, you know, both people and the team protect and then feel this as something of their own, something for their own community. So, you know, everyone, you know, this is Shadrack Onyango, an amazing human, an amazing humanitarian. Really proud to be working with him and Team Sudan, these amazing humans. Nadia, I'm sure you have more to say.
Yes, I mean, I think we could both go on and on about Shadrack and this project and how inspiring, and it's just I think it's a proud moment for all of us. Yeah. But we are a little bit over time. I do want to make, we'll go for maybe 5 more minutes. And so I'm going to combine 2 of the questions, Shadrack, that have come in on the chat. So Courtney and Ode are both asking about what is that process when a borehole needs maintenance? How often does it need maintenance? Like, what does that process look like? And anything that needs to be fixed, like who are the people involved in that?
Oh, sorry, I lost you, Nadia. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, of course. So Courtney and Ode are asking about what happens when a borehole needs maintenance, if something's wrong with it, like who are all the people involved in making like anything, if there's, you know, maintenance, if something needs to be fixed, like what does that process look like?
Okay. Yeah, that's a very good question. Borehole maintenance, in fact, in a setup like ours, we have a team called the borehole maintenance team. And boreholes are fitted with, like I said, electric pump that is powered by generator or solar. Any electric appliance or equipment can easily fail, or rather can do its lifetime, and it will need to be replaced. Like for an electric pump, a motor can easily burn out and it will need to be replaced. What would happen is that the pipes, this pump is actually installed like 80 meters below surface, 80 meters deep. So it will need to be pulled out, and then the electric pump is replaced in whole. The pipes, the pump is actually held by a chain of pipes. Before, we used to have GI pipes, galvanized, but now they have what is called, they have some PVC or other plastic pipes that are whole. They are not joined. So it is lowered all the way. So it is even easier to pull out the entire pipes and the electric cable which joins the pump that gets the power from the generator. That cable that goes down 80 meters to go and deliver power to the pump can easily get damaged, an electric cable. In that case, the pump will not stop working. You will have to pull out the entire system and replace the cable. That is the maintenance of the borehole. There are certain situations where, because of serious flooding and it gets contaminated, because sometimes you don't have much choice where you put your bowl. You may put it, because of we don't have choice, you may put it in a place that can easily get flooded. So when there's a lot of rain, the bowl can be submerged and it gets contaminated. That is when you have to do a lot of work, because you will pull all the pipes, you will do what is called cleaning. You will clean you will pump out the contaminants. You will pump out the bowl for hours. Once you have a bowl that was almost lost. So that is a major activity that had and contaminated. Otherwise, for sure, a well-drilled, well-equipped bowl can last for 20 years without the need for any maintenance, apart from supplying power and just making sure that there's minor maintenance of the pipeline. A bowl is a very resilient asset in terms of supplying water. You don't need so often maintenance, but when it happens, those are the most likely situations where you will need to undertake a serious maintenance of a bowl.
Thank you, Shadrack. So I see we're way over in time. There are some other questions that came in. And so what we'll do is reach out to all of you individually and answer all of these questions that have come in. Thank you everybody for being here with us today. Next week is our final Workshare gathering of the fall, and then we'll be back in the winter again. So if you can join us next Thursday, you will get to hear from Aphrodis and Jacques, who these are our two kind of dream makers that brought the coding school to Rwanda. So the first coding schools to take place in refugee spaces, Gahembe and Nabaheke. You will get to hear all about that amazing program next week if you are able to join us. So also want to mention, if there's any projects that you would like to hear about, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. So before we take off, if everybody wants to maybe jump off of mute, and let's just thank Shadrack, thank you, Igor, and just say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shadrack.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shadrack.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Shadrack.
Peace out, Sudan.